let's get to the Flames. I don't think there was much surprise, unless Brad Treliving probably listened to me on what we had protected, which would not be surprised. They've protected everyone we thought: Backlund, Dubé, Goodrow, Lindholm, Mangiapane, Monahan, Kachuk, Anderson, Hanifin, and Markstrom. The big name is Mark Giordano. Not much of a surprise, and the cost to leave him for the Kraken to not touch him a first and a third, not worth it for me from that perspective. But to me, we have our poll question out. I think that this is one of the no-brainers for the Kraken. I think they take Mark Giordano. I think he becomes the captain of the team, a guy that they can fit within the community. And if they need to make the move because of playoff considerations next year, they can probably get a late first for him. So to me, this is one of the no-brainers that I think the Kraken have.
I'm gonna let Sean go first because
I don't think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I think you've got Oliver Shillington, you've got Matthew Phillips. They're both young players that have potential. I look at who's available, who else is available on the left side of the blue line throughout the league on protection lists. They're players who are better, younger, cheaper, and have leadership abilities as well. I look at it now. I think it's a lot more from what I saw beforehand. Where I thought was going to be the protection list beforehand, I thought it was apps. I did not see it as realistic. Now I think there's a definite possibility, but I don't think it's a no-brainer.
I don't think Seattle will take Giordano. It's only 1 year of contract commitment, but that's $6.75 million. There's going to be some other guys they take inevitably that are going to tie up quite a bit of cap space. But really, it comes down to what is the feeling of Ron Francis. If he's really pro-veteran players, then it makes some sense, but it's hard to really get a read on that. My gut feeling would be they're going to look younger for defensemen. But Gio is I want to be clear, and I've said this many times. I mean, Gio is just terrific as far as professionalism goes, and they won't go wrong in that department if he ends up in Seattle. But I think given that he's already 37 years old and comes at 6.75 for next season, it's a bit much.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the exact same thing. To me, it's a combination of the age plus the cap hit that I just don't think it's a slam dunk like Kevin seems to think it is. So, yeah, we'll see.
It's not a slam dunk. I think it's a smart move. If they do it, I can see where they're coming from. Like I said, what Sean was talking about with Jay Beagle. You talk about someone who can flip, even after they take them, flip them, go into another contender or to a team that thinks they're close, retain half the salary, and I think that they'd be able to get a few draft picks. Granted, maybe not right after the expansion draft, but if they keep them, trade them to a contender at Christmas time, or even wait a little bit to go to the trade deadline. I don't think that's an outlandish thought process there. I don't think, though, he's going to be captain. He might be an assistant captain because of the way that if they do get him, that's the only way that I see them kind of retaining more assets within that, because if they're not going to do that, if they're not going to try and trade him, I don't think that he will be or that he will be taken. I think that it'll be a Shillington. That would make more sense, but I truly believe that it's more than 50% chance that Ron Francis does take him. It makes so much sense to me in my head, but I do understand if he doesn't. If they do want to go with a younger defensive core, you do have within the expansion draft, you have to have a balance between veterans and rookies and kind of journeyman players. You can't have all young guys. Look at Edmonton; that's what they had for a long time. They just had Andrew Ference when you had Hall come in, all these young good players, and the room was divided, right? So you have to have good veteran presence within that locker room. Gio has that. He has the drive determination. As long as they can keep him under 20 minutes or around 20 minutes a game, I think he's so beneficial for your hockey club. He plays PK. He plays the hard minutes in the defensive zone, and he has shown that he can play on the power play. I don't think he's at a point in his career that he's able to do that with sustaining 82 game pace and have still some sort of steam for the playoffs. So that is the only way that I can see Gio getting taken is if he gets flipped, if they keep him under or around 20 minutes, and he's going to, like Kevin said, he's great in the locker room. He's been up for the King Clancy Award, and I think he won it 2 years ago, did he not?
Yeah, I think that
He won the Mark Messier Leadership Award.
That's it.
There you go.
Worst
Yes.
award in NHL.
Well, yeah, we'll come for you. But it just makes too much sense for me for them to not go that route, because someone will pay at least a second round for Giordano at the right time, which is usually at the trade deadline, which would be next year for Seattle.
Can I just put this out there? We've talked about the issues with the Calgary locker room. Does that make you question Giordano's leadership?
I questioned it last year. I really did. There's too many people, though, that come out and say that he is a complete professional and that he is a great leader. Man, I'm completely split on it. Honestly, that's a great question. I really don't know one side or the other. I can't think of Taylor. I'm sorry.
I guess the question on that would be him being a veteran. Is he not able to connect as much now with the younger star players? That's I think a challenge for any veteran player now, is that younger professional athletes carry themselves a lot differently than the traditional way. And as a captain, you gotta try and find a way to adapt to that and still get everybody buying into what you're preaching, right? And maybe that's what he's having some difficulty with.
Well, and especially with the way that he has come up. He was undrafted back in the day when it was still a nitty-gritty style of hockey. So he still has that old school mentality that I'm presuming that. And obviously he kind of portrays that on the ice. And that's all I hear from anybody who's close to him and within the dressing room or within the team. And so, to Tyler's point, it would be hard to adapt within the new age superstars of the league of Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Leon Draisaitl, McDavid kind of figures that really aren't about so much about the team aspect of it and are more so potentially about themselves and worried about their longevity and not, running through walls because their coach said so. And that's where Gio kind of came up. And now these young players are asking questions and more questions about, why am I doing this? What is the process behind it? And having more of a knowledge towards the strategies and the hockey sense of the game. So I think that's a great point.
Just I know we're kind of tangenting here.
And Heidi's TV score.
It's probably 3 by now. Tangent off a tangent now. Just in regard, you mentioned the possibility of Gio becoming the Kraken captain. I would think they're going to go at least a season without one. Yeah, they'll do what Vegas does.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. And that's why I don't see the fit as big as you do there, Kev, is because with the questions with how things have gone here in Calgary, with the locker room having questions about it, and then with him only having 1 year left on his deal, is he going to be? And then talk about if they do pick him, are they flipping him somewhere?
Yeah.
As opposed to that, I agree with Tyler, and I think that the smart move is to see who emerges as the leader with whoever you pick. Yeah. And even then, with Vegas, it took 2-3 years, and they ended up getting using Mark Stone.
Yeah.
As they naming Mark Stone as the captain, and they only acquired him season half after they came into the league, and it took them another half a season to a season half to name him captain. So like I said, that's one of the reasons why I don't see it as a slam dunk.
I think to me, in terms of the locker room, to me, what I'm going to go by what Daryl Sutter says is there's been a lot of entitlement, and I don't know if that's necessarily only on Giordano. I think that maybe that's, you go back. We've talked about the stick flip or the puck flip incident with Muzzin and Kachuk and what happened after that players only meeting. I wonder if maybe the other side of it, maybe what Tyler is saying is right, is it maybe Gio isn't relating to the young players, but maybe also that sense of entitlement is part of the problem. I think Sutter said that about Valimaki, which I think the Flames were really high on. And I think maybe when Daryl Sutter came in, I think he felt maybe the Flames were a little too high on. Dylan Dubé was a bit of the same situation. Maybe even a little bit of that may have been the issue with Sam Bennett as well. So I think that if I'm the Kraken, bringing Gio in, I think he's still got an influence there, and especially when you've got a cast of misfits and nobodies and players that you don't want, there will be a motivation there at least for players to at least listen to a guy like Giordano. It may end up being a better fit that he's in Seattle whether he's captain or not. I mean, I would do it, but
based on what we've been discussing here,
Yeah.
if they decide to lean towards drafting a fairly veteran squad, then it would make sense. But I don't know. I mean, if they want to set themselves up for success, not just the first year, but for many years out the gate,
Yeah.
I don't know how veteran they really want to be.
Well, and that's the thing that we were talking about this as well. The Kraken have an advantage that the Vegas Golden Knights did not, in terms of they have two potential franchise centers in the first pick of this draft in Shane Wright and Connor Bedard, and two really strong drafts in 22-23 that you can get a really good player that you can build a franchise around. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting that the Kraken tank, but, they did admit to having a long-term approach.
Yeah.
And you wonder if they still stick with that, even with some of these veterans out there. It could be interesting. I just don't see them taking Oliver. I'm sorry, I don't see the Kraken taking Oliver Shillington in terms of, with the defense out there. I just don't see where Shillington is a fit in Seattle. They don't need to take Derek Ryan because he's a UFA that will I think he's going to end up in Seattle anyway. So that won't be.
Well, then if they don't take Gio, then who do you think they'll take if you don't think it's going to be Shillington or Ryan?
I think the next one will probably be a Matthew Phillips, but again, that's a risk. That's a prospect.
For sure. And I guess another reason why is because there's so many good defensive prospects out there that are unprotected, like a Jake Bean, Hayden Fleury, like we talked about before, Travis Dermott as well. And you already have all those young prospects that, well, not prospects, they're NHL players that could play within your system and help you grow long term. And then you get those veteran guys in there, one or two defensemen that can play up and down your lineup, if you will, and help support those young players. But once again, Sean talks about the potential of the problems within the dressing room of Calgary, and maybe I might be a bit blinded by wanting some sort of change within that lineup, within the Flames lineup, and thinking that would be the best route for both. But
Can I ask another tough question? I don't know if we've had this discussion fully. How much is that a possibility that this is a Matthew Tkachuk problem?
Man,
we're really on the tangents.
Wow. I love it. No, great question,
Yeah.
Kev. We really haven't talked about it really. From an outsider's perspective, I don't see that being the case. He's a guy who wants to win. Yeah, he has a bit of swagger, but like if you're a young player within this league, how could you not have that swagger? That is what has gotten you to where you are now. And a guy who wants to really win with Matthew Tkachuk,
Let me counteract this, though. Let's go back to Dougie Hamilton. Because Dougie Hamilton was the first time that we heard locker room issues, because he wanted to go to the museum, and apparently, if you're a Calgary Flame, you don't go to the museum. Not without all of us. All five of us, if we don't golf together, you're off the team, right?
Well, and in Boston too. Boston was the same way. That's where the locker room issues with Dougie Hamilton happened. But yes.
Okay, so Tkachuk has this swag. Tkachuk has this personality. How much maybe does that rub a guy like Gio, who's a bit more, I don't want to say introverted, but a bit more of a traditional hockey type of guy?
Mm-hmm.
How much does that rub him the wrong way?
It probably does rub him the
I mean,
wrong
if
way.
you go back to the conversation, like according to Elliot Friedman, not us, we're not the insiders, but according to Elliot Friedman, they wanted Tkachuk to tone down his act. And we were all like, how dare they tell him to do that? But maybe part of it was where Tkachuk has been acting in terms of a mature level.
Man, well, that's part of his game, though. That's how he's been so effective, is being able to be a shit disturber after the whistles, always always grabbing a guy, punch him in the face, you know. But you want those guys on your team. Yeah, he's got to find a fine balance, but it's my worry with Tkachuk is more so that he took it to the farthest extent possible. Oh, you don't want me to play this way? Fine, I'm not going to play this way at all. And he lost.
But wouldn't that be a locker room problem then? Because he's not taking the team into account. Then.
Well, that's not a locker room problem. That's a Matthew Tkachuk
well, again,
problem,
which
right?
relates to a locker room.
I don't want to add one thing here. Was it Daryl Sutter that raised the question of entitlement?
Yes, it was.
And Lucic. Lucic's at his
Lucic also
to me, that I'm not as connected to the Flames as you guys are, but to me that feels like a comment on Johnny Gaudreau as well. Like I don't know where you're at with that.
There's been issues and concerns about where the locker room's at since before Tkachuk.
Fair.
And I think that's where I come from. And as Devin said, what makes Tkachuk so good is when he is a shit disturber, when he is making me angry as a Canucks fan, and everything there. I think it is something that you have to find that right line. You look at Brad Marchand, another Canucks favorite. He was a shit disturber. He was an absolute just pain in the ass and for lack of a better word, a tool on the ice at times. And you have to find that, and he's toned it down, and his skills really come out. And he's become one of the best players in the league. And I think Tkachuk still has that ability. He just needs to find that. But he also can't be reined in too much. And if you have someone the locker room basically trying to rein him in, and you've got someone and you've got your leader either allowing that or leading that, that's the issue. And that's why I think you add all that, his age, Giordano's age. He's only got 1 year left on his deal, and it's an expensive deal as is. That's why I don't look at it as a slam dunk. Could it happen? Will it happen? There's a strong possibility. I don't think it's a slam dunk. If I'm Ron Francis, I'm looking at Oliver Shillington. He may not have reached it. He may not be a full blown NHLer now, but there's a lot of people who say his underlying stats look really good. And that he's got potential to be even better than the Hayden Fleury, even better than some of those younger players, other than maybe a Jake Bean, that's available on the protection list as young defensemen. So I think it's something that like I said, could it happen? Yes. I wouldn't do it, and I don't think it's a slam dunk.
Is Gio playing next year?
Yes.
I will say yes.
Yes, I think so.
No.
I don't. I'm with.
Okay, Chris, you got to break the tie here.
I actually did say yes. I
Okay.
didn't say it loudly.
Our producers tell us that Matthew Tkachuk is an angel.
Yeah.